All right, let's go to West Africa in the meantime. Now, supporters of Ivory Coast, former President Laurent Gbagbo, have submitted his documents to the Electoral Commission to get him registered as a candidate in the October elections after his name was removed from the list of candidates. Guillaume Soro, who's a former rebel leader who is now residing in exile in France, was also disqualified.
According to the Electoral Commission, both men were disqualified because of their criminal convictions, but the EDI party has labelled their removal from the candidate list as political, while supporters accuse government of deception. Meanwhile, the deadline for the candidacy application has since passed, and it remains unclear if the court will hear their bids. The Constitutional Council has 15 days to release the list of approved candidates for the October poll. Last year, Gbagbo was acquitted at the ICC on charges of crimes against humanity, linked to a post-electoral violence in the rest of West African nation in 2010 and 2011, in which 3,000 people died. Guillaume Soro, who led an army of rebels that swept Ouattara to power during the civil war, was sentenced to 20 years for concealment of embezzlement for public funds in April this year. Last month, 8 people were killed and 100 were injured in clashes after President Alassane Ouattara announced he would run for a third term. Ouattara, who has governed since 2011, was asked to reconsider seeking another term after his preferred successor Coulibaly died in July. Opposition parties have criticized his decision, saying the constitution bars him from running, and for him to stand again amounts to a coup.
Well, we've asked Izak Khomo, who's an African affairs analyst and Channel Africa producer, to join us on Skype for some in-depth analysis into the situation that's unfolding in Ivory Coast. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Good to talk to you again. Hello, Mr. Khomo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you then?
We're good. Thank you very much indeed. So we had a chat last week about Ivory Coast and developments taking place there. The opposition figures have lodged papers for their candidates, Laurent Gbagbo and Guillaume Soro. But these two gentlemen are abroad and they are on the disqualified list. What are we to make of this?
Well, I think what it is just people are just trying to exhaust all legal processes so that in the future, if there's any action that they take, they will say that they actually followed the processes that were there. But I think it's a bit naive to expect that this will actually bring a change of heart to the Electoral Commission. I think that's decided. It is just that people are trying to put aside any other excuses that may come up in the future.
Could there be any consequences for banning these two, even though Mr. Gbagbo doesn't even have a passport to travel at this stage, I believe?
Well, I didn't get what you first said, but Mr. Gbagbo has not got a passport, and not only that, once he lands in Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire, he'll be arrested. It should be remembered that he has got what do you call it? He's been sentenced to about 12, I think it's 12 or 20 years jail term for embezzlement of funds which belong to the West African whatever bank. So that was actually, the case was heard in absentia and he was found guilty. And that was in December last year.
All right, so where does that leave the political situation in Côte d'Ivoire? These two popular candidates not going to be in the race. Are there people that represent those parties that have enough gravitas to take their place?
Well, I think it's too late. I mean, the problem with the political situation in the Côte d'Ivoire is this, that the opposition is totally undivided. Gbagbo's party is fragmented. There was a lot of infighting as to who should take over the leadership of that party. And that thing has lasted until just quite recently. And again, you find that with these elections, there are 36 candidates who are vying for the presidency, including included in that list is the former president, Henry Konan Bédié. But now it actually shows how organized the opposition is and how weak the opposition is. And basically that's a green light and a free way for Ouattara to come back into power. That's the sad thing about Côte d'Ivoire.
So, Mr. Ouattara, people are challenging his legitimacy in terms of being able to run again. He's saying that, look, the Constitution changed halfway through one of his terms and therefore the ones before can't be counted. Is there going to be a legal ruling on that, or do we take it as a given that he's running?
Well, it's a given that it should be taken as a given that he's running, simply because the Constitutional Court has accepted, to say that Ouattara's candidacy. And the only place they can go is the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court, basically, it's weak. It has shown itself to be weak and siding with the incumbent. As far as this issue of the interpretation of the constitutional amendments, the opposition say that that clause, that's Article 55 of the Constitution, it was not changed. Therefore, it still sticks as it was from the year 2000. Whereas Ouattara claims that since the Constitution was amended, and it was only a few articles of the Constitution, therefore he's dealing with a new Constitution, which under Constitution allows him for 2 terms. Now that is the big issue which is there. He's saying that the Constitution cannot be applied retrospectively. But yet, there were clauses which said that the new changes or the amendments to the Constitution, they did not prejudice the old Constitution in any way. The articles which were untouched, they were actually valid, and they continued as per 2000 constitutional changes.
Alassane Ouattara is France's man, so they would be quite happy for him to run again.
Well, France is basically the architect of Ouattara's ascendancy into power and also into the presidency. Their architects, I should be remembered that they came and tried to take over the mediation of the early conflict between Ivory Coast, a time when the African Union had appointed ex-President Thabo Mbeki to mediate. They came up with the Makusi Accord, which was forced on Gbagbo, but the people of Ivory Coast refused. And the behavior of France was seen in the sense that it was not neutral, to the point that it has been proven that France actually were arming the rebels. They aided and abated the rebels which were under Ouattara and Guillaume Soro. This has been proven beyond any shadow of doubt.
So we saw some protests when President Ouattara announced that he will be running again. Do you think that there will be there is an appetite for more protests going forward, or is this a fait accompli now?
Well, it's a fait accompli. The whole thing is not that the elections will take place or won't take place, or whether Ouattara is coming to power or not coming to power. The major thing is the stability of Côte d'Ivoire. The people are scared that this thing actually is coming in between to come and sabotage the reconciliation process. This has actually taken Côte d'Ivoire a step backward, in the sense that the future does not bode well for Côte d'Ivoire. And when you talk of the future, it may be a future which could be measured into decades. The bitterness between North and South is going to be fossilized. And this is a very serious situation.
Do you think that it will escalate, though? Hello, Mr. Khomo?
Yes, sir. I can see you. I'm sorry, I can hear you.
Okay.
But I cannot hear you clearly.
All right.
Is there anything that you said?
I was just saying.
Did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I was just saying, do you think that there's, when we talk about the stability of Côte d'Ivoire being under threat, do you think that things will escalate, given that these protests happened, but they seem to have been dealt with regarding his announcement? There seems to be some relative calm at this stage.
Well, there is relative calm because the security forces are on top of the game. They've actually suppressed it. But that does not mean to say that discontent is not there. And with discontent, it finds a way of actually expressing itself. That will be the basis of people in the future. I mean, people to actually plan insurrections in the future. Now we have actually given reason for people to come up for rebellion, for fighting, and that's going to take place. There's no doubt about that. It won't take place immediately after the election. We won't see post-election violence, maybe. But I mean to say, in the future, the stability of Côte d'Ivoire is actually on the balance, and I think the balance has also tipped towards instability.
So what can President Ouattara do to make sure that this balance isn't tipped and that this tension doesn't explode?
Well, let's hope the tension does not explode into street violence and post-election violence. Yeah, but I think that thing cannot take place because the opposition, they do not have that. They don't have what could I say? They do not have that power or means of actually taking up arms. But that does not mean to say that they will not plan towards that eventuality. That eventuality is possible. There are a lot of ex-Gbagbo supporters, fighters, who are in exile. They're all over the West African region. They're in Ghana. They're in the Mano Basin area. And it's a very easy thing for them to come together and actually plan an insurrection. And that insurrection, whatever happens, is going to overflow into the neighboring region, into the neighboring countries. Now, that's a risk that the French and Ouattara have taken. We've got to see what happens.